really said much, but now it's time.
The only reason the door was open to me was because
It was very, very intense. But you guys were demanding it, and so we kept pushing.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Vow. I'm your host, as always, Kendrick Dix here. Glad you join us here on Vow. We talk about everything that was beauty, look inside the beauty industry, and a whole lot of others. Viral Hilton Connect. And don't forget to subscribe. Subscribers can. Tell a friend, call a friend, hit that subscribe button so you won't miss a thing. Vow. We talk about the competition, major controversy points, alleged unsafe, and so docuseries. The new testimonies from former contestants reveal some scenes that were not consensual or well handled by production. In one case, a contestant who was drunk and consensual behavior, poses scenarios and uncomfortable challenges while filmed, even if they express distress. These revelations are a big reason why people feel the show put the entertainment above responsibility. Response was not enough accountability. Critics say Banks, who was the creator and the executive, did not fully own up to her role in these decisions. In the docuseries, sometimes she deflect blame on the editors or production at a contestant, but does not apologize for the bigger systematic issues. She suggests that audience want that drama, but an answer many viewers see is blaming fans instead of taking responsibility. I mean that when they say she should have had taken more responsibility. And the other long-standing problem areas resurfacing. The critics highlight a range of troubling past and practices from the show, including pressures contestants into cosmetic suggestions or comments about their bodies, race swapping photo shoots, or other insensitive creative decisions, body shaming challenges. Some contestants saying the participation ended up in harm in their later career rather than helping them. These added context to why people now reevaluate the show legacy more critical than it was when it was airing. Well, let's hear what our very own Bob Evans has to say. Bob, take it away.
Tyra Banks is facing renewed criticism following Netflix's new docuseries, Revisiting America's Next Top Model. The series takes a deeper look at the hit reality competition and highlights moments that many former contestants now describe as uncomfortable, emotionally intense, and in some cases inappropriate. Viewers are re-examining controversial challenges, heated on-set confrontations, and creative decisions that aired years ago. While Tyra acknowledges that some moments went too far, critics argue she didn't fully take responsibility for the broader culture of the show. As creator and executive producer, many believe she had significant influence over how contestants were treated and how certain scenes were edited. Supporters say the show reflected the reality TV standards of its time. Others believe accountability is overdue. Now the debate is reignited. Was America's Next Top Model groundbreaking television, or did it cross lines that wouldn't be accepted today? This is viral.
Thank you, Bob, for the insightful information. Bob Evans, one of the best in the business, telling us breakthrough piece by piece on why Tyra Banks and America's Next Top Model was successful, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and how all these issues ran its course and stuff. We know how Tyra was portrayed, but the doc does not paint Banks purely as villain, but it shows her as a complex, influential creator. But many viewers and former contestants feel like her mean, culpable decision that put people in harmful, explosive situations. Why it's blowing up now? People who watch the docuseries are debating this on social media and press, especially discussing around whether Tyra's regret is sincere or PR managed. How much she actually oversaw the shape the coach on the show. Well, the TV edits have changed enough since America's Next Top Model had aired. Well, we're going to see about that. Let's hear what you people had to say. You people had a lot to say. Let's hear what you people had to say on what the people say.
Y'all, this reality check inside America's Next Top Model documentary on Netflix is insane. It really is. And I know the world is in a different place than what it was 20 years ago, and I was a child when this was coming out, so a lot of stuff I didn't catch. But getting the inside scoop on some of these shoots and what was happening behind the scenes, I said, damn, this is wild. And yes, accountability was taken throughout this documentary, but I feel like some of these apologies was not genuine. And number two, if you were there and still silent while some of this stuff was happening, then you are still a part of the problem, unfortunately. First of all, Janice Dickinson was nasty, and y'all love to jump down Tyra's throat, but y'all don't jump down her throat enough. She was saying some terrible things. Some of them girls really should have dragged her, and on top of that, it's a difference between constructive criticism and just being plain nasty, and she fell into the plain nasty category a bunch of times. Just because your name is Janice Dickinson don't mean you need to act like one, if you get it. But the part of the documentary that I enjoyed was watching how the show was actually created. Tyra had an idea that she wanted to execute, marrying the ideas of American Idol in the real world to make America's Next Top Model, and it really happened. She went and got Kim Mock, who helped her execute her idea. She went and got Miss J, who taught her how to walk at 16 because he was the queen of the catwalk, and went and got her friend Jay Manuel, who was her photo shoot director at the time, and did her makeup. And Nigel Barker ended up coming on later because Janice Dickinson was so nasty, they needed somebody to split the difference and be nice. So they picked him up. He was also a photographer, and they wanted somebody who was straight. But UPN ended up picking it up because a lot of networks said no, but they said yes. And they were really a family. The show became a hit. They were shutting down blocks for casting calls everywhere. Like, everybody wanted to be on the show. It was big. And the point of the show in the beginning was to show all different beauties and find out who was going to be the next big superstar. But what people didn't understand was that it was still a reality TV show at the end of the day. And I think the reality TV part of it is what really ruined the show, and it's what ruins all of these talent shows, because it's not about the talent anymore. It's about the drama and the storylines and everything else. And so these regular girls from different spaces and different avenues are coming on this show trying to be the next big thing, and they're also being exploited at the same time. And they had some of the old top models come back and speak about their experiences, and some of them had good things to say, but a lot of them had bad things to say and are still not healed from it. The Shandy story was sad because at the end of the day, she really was SA'd, and they made it seem like she was just cheating on her boyfriend. No, they took advantage of her, and y'all filmed it. And I know she was grown and she chose to drink, but she clearly wasn't herself. It was random guys. Then the next morning, y'all filmed her crying, regretting it, calling her boyfriend, him cussing her out. Y'all filmed that. She crying on the floor. Y'all filmed that. It was no remorse for nothing. But the part that got me was when Tyra invited her on the show and played the clip again, even after she said she did not want to see it and never watched it. She's trifling. Like, why would you do that? And then had the nerve to ask her why was her head down. I don't want to see that, and you know I don't want to see it. Boo, tomato, tomato, loser. Even with Kenya, she was gaining weight on the show, and they made her do a shoot of gluttony. Like, why would y'all do that? Then she would be eating a bagel, and production would make it seem like she was eating 3 bagels at a time because they was replaying the same clips in different angles. Like, y'all trifling. But the part that got me was the shoot where she felt uncomfortable when the guys was moaning around her when they wasn't supposed to and touching her, and she said something about it, and they made it seem like she was tripping. They should have got them freaky frogs off the set and got some new boys who knew how to act around them. The moan is crazy, and Tyra trying to tell her how to professionally tell them to stop but keep going is weird too. But Tyra did apologize for this and it felt genuine. Danielle is still beautiful to this day with the gap and all. She was always one of my favorites. And she talked about her experience on the show and how they wanted to close her gap, and she felt like she had to do it if she wanted to be on the show. Because if she didn't do it, she was going home. But what's crazy is they wanted to close her gap, but they made a gap on this white girl seasons later. That's wild. Like, this wasn't just a regular reality TV show. They was going to the dentist, altering teeth and all of that stuff, and potentially getting eliminated the next day. Like, it's crazy. One girl on the documentary says she still can't bite down the same ever since that surgery on the show. Like, that's wild. But the part that pissed me off was when Danielle said that Tyra called her 15 years later saying that she knew that America's Next Top Model would hinder her career and she did nothing about it. Like, imagine you telling me that and thinking I'ma forgive you. I want to run my fade with you. Come get this fade. Imagine me winning your show and I'm trying to get work and I can't get no work because I'm connected to your show and you're not doing nothing about it and you're keeping it a secret. Run my fade. Ebony said they was on here calling her ass. She had her overusing grease and getting grease all over the house. The people who was doing her hair was laughing at her, mocking her hair and giving her bald spots. Like, they was doing her dirty on here. Then she said little girls was coming up to her saying, I probably can't be a model because my skin is rough like yours. Like, they was doing her dirty on here. It was the blackface challenges for me, and then they did it twice separately. Like, why would you do it 2 times, stupid? And then they get to the whole Tiffany viral moment, and what's crazy is Jay Manuel said it was worse than what we seen, but he didn't say what it was. I hate when people do that. Tell us what it is. Like, why bring it up if you're not gonna say it? That don't make no sense to me. But Tyra saying that it was bigger than Tiffany, and she apologized. She was talking to every black girl who want to give up on themselves, and she really believed in her. And I'm like, I don't know, Tyra. Part of me feel like she really did care about Tiffany, especially because they brought her back the next season after she got herself together and stuff like that. But also Tiffany saying there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes and Tyra was rude and mean to her. So I don't know. But the part that gagged me was when Jay Manuel was talking about him wanting to leave the show and they basically wasn't letting him leave the show. It was basically like a blackball situation. And he said he wanted to leave the show because he felt like the plot of the show was changing and it wasn't the same and it wasn't genuine and they was just doing stuff just for reality TV. Jay Manuel said the integrity of the show was going down because of storylines. They was picking bad pictures on purpose for storylines. Like, that's weird. When they showed the girl with the armpit hair, I'm like, y'all know y'all could have edited that. Y'all know y'all wrong for that. The girl with the drool on her mouth, like, y'all know y'all wrong. But I also looked at Jay sideways because one season ended up turning into multiple. So were you really upset about it or not? I'm confused. But what was weird was that he sent Tyra an email and all she responded back was, I am disappointed. Like, girl. And then for you to want me back and you barely speaking to me and only speaking to me on camera, like, why am I even here? Let me go. But that's also a weird part is that when Jay wanted to leave, they wouldn't let him. But then when they wanted him to leave, he was disposable. Everybody was disposable. The network said the ratings was going down, so something had to change. So they got rid of Jay, Miss J, and also Nigel Barker. And Tyra was saying that it was out of her hands. But to be honest, once these 3 left, the show started going downhill. And I know this is unrealistic in showbiz, but I really wish that when they were trying to get rid of them 3, that Tyra would have took her show and been like, okay, well, I'm out too. But I know that's unrealistic. Because they ended up getting rid of her too and replaced her with Rita Ora. I'm like, look at you. The show became a gimmick. They was just doing stuff just to do stuff. It was not the same. But to find out Miss J had a stroke and could not walk or talk, and Nigel and Jay was by his side was really cool. And to see him talking now really almost made me cry. But the fact that Tyra still hasn't visited that man is wild. That man taught you how to catwalk at 16 and you can't walk yourself in that hospital and rehabilitation center. You're weird. And then she didn't want to talk about her relationship with Jay Manuel. And I'm just like, why you don't want to talk about it? This is a documentary. Let's hear it. Let's talk about your disappointment in him, ma'am. Let's talk about it. And then Tyra had the nerve to come back and say she coming back for season 25. Like, girl, like, I don't think that's really smart, ma'am. I really don't think that's smart. But yeah, out of everybody, I feel bad for the girls that came on the show and was used. That's all I feel bad for. Everybody else, I'm on the fence about. Pull the lever, crunk.
Happy Monday. It's President's Day. And really, what are we celebrating? Shout out to Obama. So I decided to bed rot and watch America's Next Top Model reality check. So Miss Tyra, come here. Exactly. The same double slaps that you did to your friends, firing them after 10, 11 seasons, you need slapped. Because the loyalty, womp womp, been down the drain. You could tell that once you reached the level of success and your show reached that level of success that you were desiring, that you had, God planted that in your heart, what you wanted. Like, oh, your heart's desires were met. And you had the responsibility to help these young ladies, not damage them like this. You really didn't protect them. You gave them an opportunity that someone gave you an opportunity, and you ruined it by letting the success and just being on top ruin your chances, because just because you wanted a juicy show, that doesn't mean you jeopardize people and humiliate them, you know? But that does not negate the fact that you had a blessing, an opportunity to give these people, and you didn't. And what was the point of this show if no one really won but you? And when I say no one won but her, of course, she has a boss. Bosses have bosses, like she said, but she always would have put herself first. You know, she didn't want to be on the chopping block when it came down to her show. If it was the team, the guys had to go, compared to her, that's who she was going to choose. And that just meant even dumbing down the show when it came down to not even posting great pictures of the contestants. These girls are working their butts off. You gonna put up a weak picture of them when you know they did their best? It was like it wasn't even real reality TV at that point, because you were fudging it. Y'all were making it more drama filled, and at the expense of these young ladies who really wanted a freaking career. So it just was really shady what they had to go through. They were not protected, and I just feel bad that behind the scenes was even worse than what was shown.
I watched the America's Next Top Model documentary, so you didn't have to, and all you need to know is there was no apology in sight. The documentary starts with that viral clip of Tyra yelling at a girl, saying, "When my mother yells like this, it's because she cares," which perfectly frames how on this show, abuse is disguised as care, and if I'm treating you badly, it's because it's your fault. It also highlights the superiority that Tyra feels as she smirks through this whole documentary, looking back with fondness, beaming with pride over the successes and blaming others for all the failures. The word I would use is duplicitous. The fact that they were claiming it was broadening inclusivity while mocking a black woman for her hair or saying her skin was ashy, whilst also doing race-swapping photo shoots. Tyra sees herself as a big sister protector role, whilst filming 2 sexual assaults, one of them being framed as a woman cheating on her boyfriend, and the other one as a black woman being difficult on set. And that's not to mention the girls throwing up, getting hypothermia and fainting. All the while, the EP is saying, "Oh, well, that's what makes good television." On one hand, Tyra calls out Janice, saying that's why women are going bulimic in this industry. And then on the other, she's telling a woman that she has a wide ass. On her own talk show, she's slamming the people who body shame her, whilst also on the show telling women they're eating too much and need to remove the bread from their burger. But don't worry, she included the first plus-size model, at a size 6, in a world where 3-year-olds are more scared of being fat than losing both their parents, cancer and war. That's not an exaggeration, it's a statistic. This show was not only responsible for the eating disorders of the contestants on the show, but every person watching who watched this size 6 woman be told she was fat over and over again. They claim to be changing the industry, but the makeovers conform to the industry, altering any points of difference, but ultimately sending the message that whatever you look like is wrong and needs to be changed. One season, they close someone's tooth gap. In another season, they create a tooth gap. It doesn't matter that multiple contestants got left with huge dental issues as a result of this, because beauty is pain, and if you're not willing to endure it, you don't want it bad enough. Tyra knew the industry and she perpetuated it. Rather than healing from the discrimination she faced, she made sure these contestants endured it too, because if she had to suffer, so did they. The show succeeded at the detriment of the contestants, and the entertainment came at the expense of them. I've always believed that money, fame, and power don't create evil. What it does is exaggerate what's already there. So the success didn't create a monster in Tyra, it just exposed it. They can keep saying the show was a product of their time, but starving your contestants and only prying them with alcohol so they get really drunk and create drama was not ethical back then either. Nor was deliberately picking young and vulnerable contestants and selling them a dream knowing that there was such a heavy stigma for reality TV at the time. So yes, they signed up to it, but no one knew what they were signing up to. And even when they tried to leave, they were coerced into staying. It seems like Tyra is still very proud of the legacy she's left behind.
Let's break down the America's Next Top Model documentary. We got a lot to get through. I do think that a lot of the things that were portrayed on the show were a direct reflection of the times. And in some cases, although the comments and the treatment of the contestants wasn't great, I do think that they were getting a sanitized version of what the fashion industry was like back then. For example, Giselle crying, saying that, she didn't feel like she was good enough, she didn't feel like she was going to make it. The sad reality of that is that it was perhaps true. It is an extremely competitive industry and a lot of girls don't make it. Now, I agree with Danielle in that I think Tyra's intentions started off well. I don't think they stayed that way. I do think that the network put pressure on her, but I think that ultimately Tyra just cared more about her success than the well-being of any of these women. Now, where things start to get really ugly is that they are pushing these women to their emotional, mental, physical limits while they make millions, and then these girls have to go back to Walgreens. And it's like, if you were actually going to get them opportunities after the show, it would be different. But y'all did not. Regarding Shandy's episode, it goes without saying that if somebody is blackout drunk, they cannot consent. Although where things get complicated is that if both people were severely intoxicated, then determining what was actually happening in that moment might not have been as clear cut for the crew. So yeah, if they believed that she was so intoxicated that she didn't know what was happening, they absolutely had a duty of care to intervene. But we don't know what they believed in that moment or what either of the parties had told them. And yeah, I think if the guy involved was too drunk to determine her incapabilities, then branding him as a rapist is dangerous. What is inexcusable, though, is that they saw her in extreme distress the next day, and instead of protecting her like they had the obligation to, they filmed it. And they filmed the phone call, and the next day they continued to mine her for more drama. And Tyra knew that she was in emotional distress, whether that was from guilt or confusion. You knew that, you exploited that, and you showed no empathy for doing that. Come back for part 2, where we'll talk about the controversial photo shoots and the treatment of the judges. Now, with the makeovers, changing a model's hair is pretty standard. So if you're crying over having your hair cut or bleached, you probably aren't going to work for Versace. Now, regarding Danielle's teeth, I side with Nigel. I think perfection is boring. But it is strange how Tyra, who is championing these bigger bodies, different skin colours, is telling her to get her gap closed. But also, this is me saying that now. 20 years ago, I might have been like, yeah, close the gap too. Now, the fact that she widened a girl's gap just a couple seasons later is crazy. And that's where it's like, girl, no, you are just fucking with people's looks for your ratings. Now, the race swapping was obviously problematic, but this also wasn't the only show at the time doing this. You had Little Britain, 30 Rock, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So it doesn't make it right, but it also wasn't seen as inexcusable as it is today. I guess my hot take regarding this is that I don't see it as an issue. Do I think it's glamorising violence? To who? Straight men aren't reading Vogue going, oh yeah, she looks so cunty, let me go out and kill someone. It's a concept, and I think when we talk about making art morally acceptable, then we start to lose the voices and point of views that make art powerful in the first place. Concepts that make you stop, make you question, make you talk, they shouldn't be discarded just because they make people uncomfortable. Now, having this girl recreate a gun shooting when that is something that her mother experienced, wrong on so many levels. And you could have had any girl do that one and swap her. They knew what they were doing. Now, this shoot, as somebody that had an eating disorder, I also remember this shoot very specifically. Even at the time, I remember thinking, look, you might have had to airbrush her stomach, but that doesn't even look real to me. However, again, we are talking about a time when multiple celebrities have very public eating disorders, and America's Next Top Model was not solely responsible for perpetuating or upholding that. Now, Kenya's saying that they edited footage of her eating the same bagel over and over again, but then there's also other models saying that she can't stop snacking, so two things can be true. And although they made comments about her watching what she eats, I do think that they were sugar-coated compared to what she might have heard in the casting rooms. And ultimately, modelling is a vapid industry. It is about what you look like on the outside, so you have to be able to take critiques on that. It's like a performance review for your face and your body. However, they definitely did her dirty with this fat story arc. That was very intentional. I guess I still don't really know what happened here, because he was leaving in Cycle 9. Tyra stopped speaking to him outside of on the judging panel, but then he was there from Cycles 10 to 18. So did they, not speak to each other off set this entire time? I felt like we missed several chapters. Anyway, she knows she was dead wrong for treating him the way she did, which is why she didn't want to talk about it on camera. Oh, I should call Jay. Now? 20 years later? Regarding the host getting fired, I genuinely don't think Tyra would have done that, because A, she's smarter than that, and B, you could tell that she didn't want Jay to leave in the first place. Also, she got fired not that long after that, so that just kind of demonstrates that it wasn't really her decision. And bro, they replaced her with Rita Ora. You thought making a singer the main host of a fashion competition was going to pick up the ratings. Like, bro, the show was dead. You had 20 cycles, yeah? This isn't Grey's Anatomy. But yeah, should Tyra have called them? Should she have checked in on them? Absolutely. But I think the fact that Tyra didn't even go to visit Miss J tells you everything you need to know about Tyra. Number one priority is Tyra. Now, for me, the real crimes of this show were letting these young, ambitious women duel it out, knowing that the industry wasn't going to welcome them afterwards anyway. It was exploiting them in probably every which way just to make good TV. And it was sending home more talented models just because they didn't fit your reality TV story arc, which is probably part of the reason why the industry didn't respect you.
Netflix definitely was not using this documentary to make you like her. But first, my name's Jock, and if you're ever running out of things to watch, I got you. America's Next Top Model premiered in May of 2003. I was in the 3rd grade, never missed an episode for 15 seasons. I grew up in this era of reality TV, and Tyra was like top 3 for me. I say all that to say Netflix is not letting up on her in this documentary. Without giving away a single spoiler, I will say the documentary does a very good job of going into how the show got started as far as like Tyra's background, into the show being a success it was, and everything that happened post. And if you watch the show, they do pull a lot of girls who are recognizable. Not everyone is going to be in here. It was a 24 season series, but the girls they do pull are girls that you will notice and you will remember. But the thing is, Netflix asked her and went through everything that happened. Like, I mean, every single questionable moment Tyra had. We're rooting for you, all of the eating disorders, the blackface photo shoot. I do mean all of it. And while Tyra definitely has a seat and chair to explain her side of things, Netflix not letting up on her. And neither are these judges. Jay Emanuel, Miss J, and Nigel Barker are all up and through this documentary. And they've broken ties with Tyra for a while now, and they're not holding back. They are not holding back a lick of how they felt about things that were going on, about things that happened, how girls were treated, everything. And I mean, Miss J is still as shady as ever and shading Tyra to the very last minute. The show did start out with good intentions, but it quickly lost the plot here. We quickly lost the plot here, Tyra. And one thing I learned about Tyra is that she is okay with playing the game. My girl will play the game. But Netflix did their thing with this one. Like, you think you're about to get a biased version of America's Next Top Model? You are not. You are not. Danny, Whitney, Joni, like, they are going into details about their true experiences on this show. And you can't deny, it was the 2000s, but it was also a shit show. It was an absolute shit show.
Just finished the first episode of Reality Check on America's Next Top Model. These are my thoughts. They open with a montage of the iconic scene of Tyra being like, "We were cheering for you. I was cheering for you. We were all cheering for you. I've never yelled at a girl like this." And then the edits of that, and like, you had to be there to understand the way without social media that like had a chokehold on us as a culture. And I think part of being like a millennial pop culture girl is like, I think that scene all the time. Like, anytime something's disappointing, I'm like, "We were cheering for you. We were all cheering for you." In anything. Second thought, I forgot how iconic the Jays were. Like, they were hands down the best part of this show. They were so amazing. Season 1, when they brought out the scales and weighed the girls, that was insane. This whole show was so crazy, and people are looking back on it and being so critical, but you have to remember, like, this was 2007, 2008, way before cancel culture, without social media. Like, we were all just 13-year-old girls watching this in our homes when they would run it on E all weekend long, and you could just sit for like 8 hours on a Saturday and watch an entire season in one day. And it was binge watching before there was binge watching. Like, it was premier television. And it's also so sad to see like all of what was going on with all these girls. And I'm so curious, like, in this social media era, I feel like it would have been like a one and done. They would have done one season. The girls would have been like, "This is what really happened." We never would have had another one. But because it was early on, like, we just got it all. And it was so insane. Like, what a time to be alive.
I just watched all 3 parts of the new Top Model documentary that is on Netflix today. I'm surprised because I feel like Tyra maybe gave us nothing in this. Documentary is called Reality Check Inside America's Next Top Model. As I said, you could watch it on Netflix today. There are 3 full episodes explaining what went on behind the scenes of this show. I thought that this was going to be a fun watch for some reason because of the way that I remember this show, but it was actually just incredibly sad. And there's spoilers ahead, so if you don't want to know any spoilers, don't watch ahead. Shandy, who you may remember from Cycle 2 of America's Next Top Model, is in this documentary, and her account of being on the show is just horrendous. She had an experience when they went abroad, and she said she doesn't really remember it, and it was not necessarily consensual, and she had a boyfriend at the time, and that the show filmed the whole thing. No one stepped in to stop anything from happening, and ultimately they used it as a storyline on the show about the girl who cheated, and it was all about how she cheated on her boyfriend, and they also recorded her phone call to her boyfriend, which is also horrendous. I remember this all going down at the time, but we didn't really know the behind the scenes of the fact that she wasn't just cheating, that there's more to this story. This woman seems broken from this experience, and I think it ruined a lot of her life, and that is so sad and tragic. And looking back on it, I just see the morals are not there from anyone producing this show. Even the way that Tyra responded to it wasn't great, and they played a part where you could see that Tyra knew what happened the night before, and she is talking with the girls, trying to get Shandy to cry about it and open up about it just to use it as part of the show, which is just sneaky. Other contestant that I remember very well was Danielle. She had the gap in her teeth. She was talking about how they kept forcing her to close the gap in her teeth, would tell her that she would not have any success without doing so. She really didn't want to. I remember this so well. And also that in a later season, they gave a girl a bigger gap in her teeth, which was kind of a slap in the face to Danny in her experience. And she also went on to talk about how when she left the show, that she couldn't get work as a model, that having the stigma of America's Next Top Model actually made her have no success. And she saw Tyra years later, and Tyra acknowledged that she knew that she was struggling, but that she did nothing to help her. They talked about this incident, of course, that we were rooting for you. We were all rooting for you as one of the biggest moments of the show, if not the biggest. And when I rewatched this in the documentary in the full scope of what happened leading up to this moment, Tyra claims that she put so much work into Tiffany that she was disappointed because she helped her behind the scenes, and that she felt like she wasn't trying anymore, and she felt so like betrayed by that. And that's why she exploded. Now, ultimately, when I watched what happened in that situation, I felt like this woman was done being humiliated on this show. They wanted her to read a teleprompter. They knew she was going to stumble through it. The other girls stumbled through it. They made fun of them. I just saw someone who was exhausted and did not want to be exploited or made fun of for one more second. And she just said, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. And ultimately doesn't matter because a lot of these girls won this show and they won nothing. So did that matter whether or not she continued on in this journey to win a prize and then really not have any success in a modeling career? Not really. Very heartbreaking revelation in this show is to find out that Miss J had a stroke in recent years, I believe in 2022. He is still recovering from that stroke. I didn't know that. Obviously, they tell you at the end. This is a bigger reveal at the end of the documentary. Then it made sense because I felt like he was being a little withholding, but now I actually know that he is struggling to speak properly. And the worst part of the entire thing is finding out that Miss J can no longer walk, and he is still learning to walk again, is talking a lot better, obviously could do the documentary, but cannot walk. That is just heartbreaking. I was so saddened to hear this because I mean, the walk is everything, and that must be extremely difficult. And that Tyra Banks has never once visited him. He also mentioned that Mr. J and Nigel did go see him in the hospital. They seemed to have a bond because they all got fired by Tyra at the same time. I feel like Tyra gave us nothing in this. I feel like all she did was have calculated answers to every question that just seemed very rehearsed. I don't know if lessons were learned from this. She had a lot of excuses for what they did and why. I have to say, like, to a degree, you can say, looking back on something all these years later, of course, there's going to be problems with things that you did because it was a different time. And I do think it's hard for the younger generation to fully understand some of that. I cannot believe that at the end of this, she ends it with saying, I'm coming back for cycle 25. You have no idea what we have in store for you. So what she took away from this is that people want her to do Top Model again and that she should bring the show back. These young girls just signed up for a dream that ultimately most of them did not get, even if they won the show. Were just exploited for entertainment value, and that's it. And I'm just so sad to hear about Miss J and all the pain that this show caused so many people that participated in it.
Okay, I have mad respect for Tyra Banks. She is not sorry. She is not apologizing to you. That bitch is not effing sorry. She will not bend the knee. And I respect that. Well, you want her to lie? Lie and say how bad she feels? Everyone's coming to me and they're like, none of the judges were sorry. Why should they be? They're all loaded. Why should they give a flying, if they didn't give a at the time, they certainly ain't going to give it a now. But mad respect for Tyra, because that's hard to push back on that many people trying to struggle session you. And she's just like, you, and do what I want. And I got to respect that. So I tip my hat, my lady. Keep on being yourself, which is someone who doesn't give a flying shit.
Tyra Banks has announced a new cycle of America's Next Top Model, and now this whole documentary makes sense. We recently found out that there was going to be a documentary on the show America's Next Top Model called Reality Check Inside America's Next Top Model, and that the 3-part documentary series would be premiering on Netflix on February the 16th. The Netflix documentary features the host, Tyra, as well as some of the judges, Miss J, Jay, and Nigel, as well as the executive producer, Ken. Just a reminder, Janice Dickinson is not going to be in the Netflix America's Next Top Model documentary because she's going to be appearing in E's documentary about America's Next Top Model, which will premiere on March 11th. In the Netflix documentary, we're also going to be hearing interviews from past contestants. I also want to add Joni here because she did correct me that she is in the Netflix documentary. And Kenya will appear in both the Netflix and the E! America's Next Top Model documentaries. Now, when Netflix dropped the trailer for the documentary, people were like, okay, maybe this is Tyra, Ken, the show, taking accountability and ownership for the toxicity that the show was. That was the thought until the part in the trailer where Tyra was like, I do admit we did take it too far, but the audience demanded more, basically shifting blame to the audience. Now, the 3-part documentary has been released in Australia. America's Next Top Model had its last cycle in 2018, but at the end of the 3-part documentary series, Tyra says that there will be a cycle 25 in the future. Tyra says, after the show I had so many different ideas for my life, I'm obsessed with pivoting. I feel like my work is not done. You have no idea what we have planned for cycle 25.
Do I regret making that girl chop her own hand off? Of course I do. Of course I do. Do I see it differently now? Of course I do. 20/20 vision in hindsight, of course I wouldn't make her do that. But you guys made me do that. That's what I'm saying. It's reality TV. You guys would have been more mad at me if I didn't make her do that. You see what I'm saying? My hands were tied. Okay, production said, you have to do this or the show is canceled. Okay, even though it was my idea to make her chop her hand off. And I spearheaded the whole thing. But my hands were tied. You guys forced me to do that. Would I do that today? Of course I wouldn't. Of course I wouldn't do that today. But we're in a different time now. We live in a different time. Do I regret making her chop her hand off? Of course I do. Would I take it back? Yeah.
Need to talk about Netflix's Reality Check Inside America's Next Top Model. I just finished all 3 episodes. I feel like it just scratches the surface. First of all, I'm so happy they had the Jays and Nigel on, but where is the other judge? Janice Dickinson, Twiggy, I think Kamora Lee. There were so many guest judges and so many models that they didn't show. And Winnie Harlow, they put up, but a lot of models that they showed but didn't actually speak. I feel like this could be a 10-part series. I'm really happy they had Tyra on, but I feel like she had so much media training that she acknowledged and recognized some of the things that happened, but like never actually apologized or said sorry for any of the things that she did. She took accountability, but like didn't say they were bad things, just said that they were, in hindsight, we could recognize that it was the wrong decision or that it was questionable decisions. I don't know. She didn't really actually apologize. Everyone kind of blamed or moved blame around the whole time. End of the day, it just really shows that it was a reality show first and America's Top Model second. And that's kind of how I feel about like The Voice, all the talent shows. Like they're on the TV show, but then the future of their career is kind of uncertain unless you're like a select few. So maybe 1 out of 100 contestants really makes it beyond the show. Yes, future contestants after season 1 and 2 know that getting into it. The season 1 and 2 contestants, I think, had no idea what they're getting into. I think they really thought that they were going to be America's Next Top Models. So you can't blame them for anything besides having their hopes up. And they definitely, I think, took advantage of them. I think that's pretty clear and really pushed the envelope beyond what it would mean to be a good model. Like it was definitely 4 storylines. They definitely went into personal life and try to push the boundaries a lot. And I think people thought that this would be like Tyra's come to Jesus moment, and it definitely was not. She is doubling down. She is like, it made great TV. It was nice seeing the Jays. It was nice seeing Nigel. I definitely think that it held some of their careers back and that it's kind of like what they were known for. And meanwhile, Tyra moved to Australia, started an ice cream business, and like has recreated herself a million times over. Janice, hindsight is 2020, but let's be honest, in 2003, a lot of these things they knew was messed up. They knew that it was not okay, and you know, they thought they were making good reality TV and exploiting them to do so in the process and hurting a lot of people. And I'm sure there's a lot of stories to be told. I'm curious who else will step forward now. My biggest question they don't talk about is, did they get paid? Did any of these models get paid during the show if they didn't win? And then if they won, did they get paid the contract, the whole thing? Because I think that's why it's so important now that therapy is provided. Even on Love is Blind, right? You see like food is being given out because they talk about like lack of food, lack of good housing, lack of communication with family. Like, I think having those support systems is so important. Locking them in a hotel for the weeks afterwards. If you got kicked off the first episode, you were stuck in a hotel. And I think it's just the beginning of all of this. I think a lot more people from this show will come forward, and a lot of other shows are going to come forward.
Okay, so I just finished the America's Next Top Model documentary, and it was actually worse than I thought it was going to be. Like, I didn't think Tyra was going to sit down for a documentary where they go through everything. And I'm not going to lie, the end kind of wrecked me. So the first major theme you're going to see is that there was this constant clash, this constant struggle between Tyra trying to pull the curtain back on the fashion industry and change the industry while producing a television show that relied on ratings, which led to the show upholding those very same toxic standards that were very real in the fashion industry. But now that you're doing it on a national platform, made it even more damaging. Starting with episode 1, it's 3 episodes long. Your heart will break for Shandy. She was a model whose storyline included her cheating on her boyfriend in Italy. They did that girl so dirty. Now, one thing you will not see in this documentary is very much accountability taken. The sense that I got from watching all 3 episodes is that there was always someone else making the decision. In some instances, Tyra says that she didn't know what was happening at the time because she didn't deal with production. Other instances, the decisions came from higher up. There are a few sorries that you will hear from Tyra herself, the judges, the executive producers. I could probably count them on one hand because pretty much everyone involved stands 10 toes down that their intentions in the beginning were pure. But as the show got bigger and there were ratings and TV executives involved, they lost the plot. And what's heartbreaking in this documentary that us viewers figured out several cycles into it is that Top Model wasn't an opportunity for these girls to break into the modeling industry. It actually blacklisted them. Personally, I feel for Tyra because I believe she is just one woman who became the face of something that was happening behind closed doors, toxicity in the modeling industry. But I also think it was very hard to listen to how the 2 J's, Jay Manuel, Jay Alexander, and also Nigel Barker talked about her. All in all, it is definitely worth the watch.
You did not hold back one bit. You people let it be known that, hey, Tyra Banks should have taken more accountability, more responsibility in her actions as the creator, the host, and executive producer, and put in situations like that. You see former contestants also on what people say were speaking on support of Tyra, like Adrian Curry and others who really wants to dismiss that, who was former contestants. This is really, really tricky. It's been a 3-part series on Netflix. When you watch stuff like that, and you kind of think like you didn't think it was going on, but you kind of was wondering like with the girls party and then the race swap, and then Tyra Banks made the show all about her. So you kind of get that indication on what was going on at that time. So thank you all for watching this edition of REAIR. I've been your host, Kendra Dixon, saying so long. Thanks for watching. We'll see you later.